Hello again and welcome back to our course on Project 2019. In the previous section we looked at costs and I showed you quite a few different ways of handling cost but with specific references to the bathroom refit project. I'm returning now to the wedding and we're going to look at costs in the wedding because largely speaking the issues of cost in the wedding are completely different to those in the bathroom refit. And it's important to use the appropriate resources and the appropriate approach to cost depending on the type of the project. So let's take a look now at the cost for the wedding. Now earlier on, if you recall, we added a small number of resources to this plan and we assigned them to various tasks. What I've done now is to add quite a few more resources, primarily as cost resources. So again, if we jump across to the resource sheet, you can see all of these new resources that I've added. So things like wedding venue, reception venue, catering, flowers, so on and so forth. And I've set up the accrual of those as end. And you might think, well, surely you're not going to pay for those venues at the end of using them. Well, no, but the important point here is that those resources are not assigned to the use of the venue. They're assigned to the booking. And the cost is incurred in the case of the wedding venue when we book the venue. Now, if I go back to the Gantt chart, the task where we're actually assigning that resource is book wedding venue, which is all the way down here. And the cost we've entered there for that is $3,500. And that's going to be at the end of the task. So May the 17th in this case. So we're not talking about consuming it through the life of the task, we're talking about accruing a cost at that particular point. Now let's suppose that in fact with this cost of the wedding venue, we have to pay for it in two parts. Maybe we had to pay a deposit and then we had to pay a balance, perhaps on the day of the wedding. In that case, what you would normally do is to create two costs, a deposit cost and a balance cost, and assign the deposit cost to the booking task and the balance cost to the wedding day itself. Now, I haven't done that here, but it is a pretty straightforward thing to do. And with all of these costs associated with the wedding, you may well pay for them in two or more installments. It's certainly the case that with most of these resources that you wouldn't set them up as materials that are used during the life of the project. So if I go back to the resource sheet, and in the case of the photographer, I've set it up as a cost and I've set it up for accrual at the end. That's the task where we book the photographer. And if we're going to pay for the photographer fully in advance, we would accrue this at the end of the task where we're booking the photographer. Now let's return briefly to the wedding rings. I set them up initially as materials. We were talking about materials at the time, but they're not really material resources. Now you could say, well, the material is the wedding ring, the unit is the ring, and we're buying two of them. But in reality, the wedding rings will probably be more appropriately set up as a cost as well. And indeed, I'm going to change this to a cost resource. So as you can see, virtually all of the resources here are set up as cost resources. We have work resources just to make sure that the work is spread out for the bride and groom and the bridesmaids. But of course, that time is not chargeable. So we have pretty much a completely different arrangement here to the arrangement we have in the bathroom refit project. Now again, referring back to the preceding section, many of the costs for the wedding could have been set up as fixed costs for tasks. And I've set one of them up here just to show you. So if we scroll down to task ID 42, register wedding and get license, I've put in there a local state license fee of $60 for a marriage license. Clearly, many of the other costs could be handled in just the same way. One of the key differences there is, as you can see by comparing, say, task 42 with task 46, book wedding venue, is that whereas the wedding venue cost shows up as a resource on the Gantt chart of $3,500, the marriage license is a fixed cost and so it doesn't show. You will develop over time as you use Project 2019 more and more of your own way of getting about dealing with cost, and very often the reasons for doing them in certain ways are very specific to the project you're working on. Having set up those costs, let's go up to the Project tab and Project Information. And we're going to click Statistics. And we have a cost at the moment for our wedding of $29,750. It might also be the case with a project like this that you may want to set up a budget for incidental expenses, as we did with the bathroom refit. Now, apart from assigning those costs to the project, I've also done a little bit more work on the resourcing from the point of view of removing any overallocations. So currently we have no overallocated resources on my schedule. And then what I did was to take task 7, or the preparation phase summary task, and set up a dependency. So if I scroll down all the way down to wedding day, you can see here in the predecessors column, the dependency is shown there. So 7 FS plus 21 days. So that's a predecessor of the wedding day. Now you should be getting used to reading those. So this particular task, wedding day, has 7 as a predecessor. That is a finish to start link and a 21-day lag. So what I've said here is that I've worked out how long it's going to take to do the preparation. I've then added 21 days and said that's my wedding date. So that's given me, in effect, 21 days, that's working days of contingency from the end of task 7, which is the preparation through to the wedding day. Now at some point I may want to decide to fix that wedding date. I may choose the next Saturday, for example. But by adding that little bit of contingency there, I'm going to allow for some of the little bumps and mishaps that are going to happen along the way. So currently I have a wedding day that's due to take place on November the 21st, 2019. I'm now ready to get the project started and start tracking progress. That is where we're going to start in the next section, so I'll see you then.